We have a cracking workshop for you today. And it won't just be about vendors talking to you about what they are doing in the market. We've got real customers on stage. We've got clients. We've got users. And they're going to be telling us, they're going to be laying down a challenge to us and talking to us about what they expect to see from us in the future, how we need to meet their needs in a changing world. And my challenge to you is to make this session interactive. We are going to run for about 10 minutes each. We're then going to, there might be some variation in that. There's some lobbying over breakfast. Some might be 5 minutes, some might be 25 minutes. My job is to keep everyone on time, and if I don't, Barry certainly will. But I would encourage questions after each session, because by the time we get to the end, we may well have forgotten them. We'll keep them to sort of 2 or 3, then we'll have a wash-up at the end of the session. But let's get a real debate going. Today is the workshop day. Apparently the real summit starts tomorrow. I'd say to you, let's lay down the challenge and let's start the debate today, because there are lots of challenges facing our industry. This is a changing world. And the speed at which it's changing really came home to me a couple of Fridays ago. I was sat on a plane at Heathrow, and I was 2 behind the plane that some poor British Airways employee forgot to latch down the engine cowlings, which promptly dropped off the engines on takeoff, causing a fire in the right engine, and an engine shut down, and a plane that circled the M25 and came back and landed on the southern runway at Heathrow Airport. It caused absolute chaos. It shut down Heathrow Airport for a good few hours, caused 200 flight cancellations. But I was second in line to take off. I was on a flight to Gibraltar. I was coming down to Spain to go windsurfing in the south of Spain for the weekend. And the captain came on and said, a bit of a problem. There's parts of an engine on the runway. So we're gonna scoot across to the other runway and try and get out. And then the other problem was then the plane that was making the emergency landing was coming in on the other runway. So he said, we're pretty much being left to our own devices. We're going to shut down, and they'll come back to us as and when they've dealt with the emergency. Anyway, the first thing I did was switch my phone on, log on to Twitter to find out what people were saying about it. And the news spread really fast. There were people talking about some sort of incident at Heathrow. The day before, there'd been a terrorist incident an awful incident in Woolwich in London, where a soldier was hacked to death by 2 guys trying to get the British Army out of Afghanistan and talking about what they'd done in Iraq. So there was a kind of heightened tension in London. People assumed this was some sort of terrorist incident. And I thought, well, actually, I'll go on and tweet and tell them, no, our captain has told us, the plane lost an engine on takeoff, full-on emergency going next to us. And it was actually happening right next to us. So I went on and tweeted. I'm not very prolific. Anyone who looks at my Twitter profile will know that I'm not a newsbreaker. But I thought, for once, I'm in the heart of the story. And what I wasn't prepared for was, within a matter of minutes, I was contacted by the BBC, by the Press Association, Associated Press, LBC London, and a range of other news organisations. So they are hot on tracking what the general public are talking about, and they are using us to break the news. Ultimately, this was headline news. It was front page of the London Evening Standard. That photograph, which I tweeted, which wasn't mine, by the way, that's a cardinal sin. I've also discovered that. Don't tweet someone else's photograph. I was on the right-hand side of the plane, so I couldn't actually see the emergency going on. But I thought, well, sod it, I'll send someone else's photo instead. That's not the done thing. But that was the front page of the London Standard. And all of the commentary came from passengers and people who were in the area. And really interestingly, there was some confusion because Jeremy Thompson, the Sky News presenter, was on another plane also next to the aircraft, and he was tweeting. So that got a little bit confusing. My guys back at base thought I was moonlighting. And David Gallagher, the CEO of Ketchum Europe, was on the actual plane that lost the engine. And a lot of the footage that appeared on BBC News and I guess on all the news channels in the States was his footage. It was incredible, the pace at which the news story developed, and the pace at which it also disappeared, because next day it had gone. If that was a story about your brand or your product, and in this case, British Airways have got some explaining to do, then you want to be on it, and you want to be on it in real time, and you want to be addressing the issues as they happen. And that's when it really struck me that our world is changing fast. The thing that also astonished me was that was retweeted 317 times, I guarantee, and favorited by 9 people. That will never happen to me ever again. I've never said anything quite so profound. So I'm very proud of it. I'm going to frame it and I might even send it to my mum. But so a lot of things changing in our industry. You know, newspapers are dying, particularly in the Western world. I know in some markets, newspapers are actually growing, but that presents lots of challenges to us in terms of aggregating data. You know, suddenly overnight data turned big and became really hard to collect, became hard to generate insight from it, and that's the challenge. But the key thing is that reputation is more important than ever. You know, brands are made or broken in a heartbeat. You know, ask people like BP or Toyota or Research in Motion. They're investing more and more money in protecting their brands, and we are right in the sweet spot. We are the people who should be able to help them do that. But social is presenting a challenge in that other people are jumping onto our bandwagon. If we don't act quick, we are going to miss the party. At Gorkana Group, we've been doing, we always ask our customers what they want. We've done a big piece of research recently. They're telling us 4 key things at the moment. They want more insight. And they don't just want the content, they want the content that matters. They want that, multinationals tend to want that now on a global basis. They're not just interested in local campaigns or local data. They want it in real time, or as close to real time as they can, because they want to be able to action fast. And they want all of that for less money, because they are operating in many cases in markets where budgets are tight and where economies are shrinking. So we have a big challenge to address all of that, but I think it also is a huge opportunity to us. So to get the debate going today, I've pulled together not only AMEC's best-looking panel of the 2013 conference, but also the most diverse. We've got vendors, we've got in-house communicators, we've got agencies, and we're representing not all markets, but certainly a global perspective. And I'm going to now ask Margot Sinclair Saville, who's SVP at H&K Strategies, to come and get the debate going. She's going to be talking about technology, big data, and visualization. So please give Margot a round of applause.
Thank you. Well, what Jeremy didn't say was at breakfast when we were talking about or fighting over who gets how much time, he also told us we should be here early for getting makeup put on for our presentation. It's like, where's the makeup people? Anyway, the interesting thing about talking about the future of measurement, as my friend Giselle there told me just a minute ago, is that it's all predictive and you can't tell me if I'm right or wrong. So it's great to be here. So I'm going to be talking about, there we go. More visualization, self-tracking, and the Internet of Things and big data. How many people here know about the Internet of Things? Oh, good. All right. Okay, well, we'll start with visualization. There already is visualization. That's a hard word to say at this time of day when you're a 9-hour time difference from home. The interesting thing about the visualization of data is that it's already being done to a degree, and with all due respect to the vendors who are here and who are on the panel with me, each vendor has something to offer to everybody. This is a new vendor that's just come out in the US that's starting some different things that I did want to mention, and I'm sure everybody's going to be there and beyond in the future. Their name is Bottlenose, and they have enhanced visualization that looks at live social intelligence. In other words, they look at business intelligence. So what's happening right now on any brand, on any topic, market, or audience, this is happening right now with vendors. But what is going to happen, what is happening now with Bottlenose, is that you can, instead of doing a topic profile or getting your data, pulling it back and pulling out charts and things that represent it, you can look on the screen and see right in front of you how it's all live. And it shows you everything that's happening as it happens, as opposed to collecting the data, bringing it back and analyzing it. At the same time, it looks at discoveries. It discovers what are the topics, what are the threats, what are the conversations that are happening in terms of trends and opportunities. And again, this is happening right now, but in the future, it's going to be even more of a degree of this happening. Then live insights. Well, you know, across the way they're talking about insights. We all are involved with key insights. Key insights is what makes measurement different from monitoring. But in the future, it's going to be easier and faster to take what's happening now, to take the discoveries, to take the insights, and turn them into predictive analysis. So right now on Bottlenose with Twitter and Facebook only, but again, in the future, this is going to change, is that you can, as this chart right here, you can correlate what is happening with live social conversations combined with a business intelligence algorithm that correlates social conversations to things like stock prices and to things like site traffic and sales and things like that. So that's the future in terms of visualization, is that you're going to see everything live in front of you and you're going to be able to do more predictive analysis. Next, we have the quantified self is the movement, and this topic here, self-tracking geeks are shaping our future, is actually the topic of a panel at South by Southwest in the United States, where every March, I believe, there's like 25,000 people who come to Austin, Texas, for 5 days of presentations on interactivity. And this panel on self-tracking geeks was one of the most popular at South by Southwest this year. It's already happening to a degree. It's happening because these small and cheap sensors are now available, and they continue to be more and more available. Smartphones, of course, are everywhere, and people are curious. They want to know more about themselves. They want to know more data about themselves. They're infatuated with data. I would go that far. So I found this stat right here. 14.5% of US adults are in the self-tracking quantified self movement right now. Across the world, there's a global quantified self conference later this year. In the US, there was one in Amsterdam last year. There are tens of thousands of people who want to know what's going on with themselves, and they're sharing that information. Right now, if you look at the objects, the technology that's available, it's massive, it's ugly, you put it on places, whatever. In the future, it's going to be built into clothing so that you won't have to sacrifice fashion, for those of you who are worried about that. You won't have to sacrifice fashion for these self-tracking sensors. They'll be embedded into your clothing already. There are companies already, such as Qualcomm, Intel, GE, and Nike, that are already creating technology for self-tracking. There are going to be more, and this can change our industry because people are sharing their information. So, say, for example, somebody's going to the airport 5 times a year and they're tracking their steps and that they're sharing that information, then brands can then say, okay, we now know that this is what they're doing when they're at the airport, and you can then tweak your strategies to maybe sell them things like coupons or things for things at the airport, like bottled water, restaurant goods. I mean, there's all kinds of services and goods that are sold at airports that can be take advantage of these kinds of experiences because it's being self-tracked. Of course, privacy is part of the discussion. The head of Google said just a couple of weeks ago that in the future he sees that kids in school right next to their sex education classes are going to be having internet privacy classes, so they'll be side by side because this is going to be so huge. The Wired, which actually was part of the beginning of the quantified self, they wrote this article recently. What if your boss tracked your sleep, diet, and exercise? There's a company in Oregon, a mobile technology company, that's doing that right now. It's a volunteer situation where they're going and they're tracking a lot of things, what they eat, what their exercise is, how they sleep, all kinds of information like that, and they're sharing that information. Right now, it's voluntary, and they're trying to work out the whole privacy issue. But will one day in the future, will that become a thing that is necessary? We'll have to wait and see. The ideal thing with privacy really is that we should be able to decide what we want to share and who we want to share it with, and to be able to have the ability to rescind that sharing whenever we want. So I think those are kind of some key things to look at. So the Internet of Things, M2M, what does that mean for those who don't know? It's been around probably for 10 years or so, but it was restricted to the developer world and not really part of the common language, and it's becoming more and more so right now. It's really a network, a wireless network of sensors. So it's interesting. Starting in 1994, we had the revolution of the Internet, and it's still ongoing. In 2000, we had the revolution of mobility, of smartphones, and it's still ongoing. 2013 really we're on the brink of this revolution called the Internet of Things. Connectivity is a seed of this change. There are already, I had to write this stat down because I found it a little surprising, I guess, or interesting anyway. There are already more computing devices in the world than there are people. And in a few more years, the number of devices is expected to be in the trillions. They all have to have IP addresses, which is going to make it very challenging as well. One of the things that has come up there's a book by Google Chairman Eric Schmidt called The New Digital Age, Reshaping the Future of People, Nations, and Business. And one of the changes that's already taking place that he noted was in the Congo, where there are women who are fishing, and they used to take their fish to market and often watch the fish spoil because people weren't buying it. Well, these days, they keep their fish with them in the water, and they wait for customers to phone them. And that's because of the prevalence of phones these days. So things are changing, and they're going to continue to change at rapid paces. There are more and more objects embedded with sensors. And what we can do with that information, and I know there was a big data workshop just a little while ago. I'm sure they talked about it in great length. But what we can do is measure that information and then use it for strategic insights. So really, we're looking at this out of milk was one of my favorite examples because right now, your cars, there are certain models of cars and SUVs that they will send you alerts when there's a traffic problem in your area or your route that they know. Right now, there are home appliances that are made by LG that they take your fridge, and the fridge knows how much information you have, what the expiration date is, and it will actually send you recipes based on the goods that you have in your fridge. That's happening already. What's going to happen in the future is that your fridge will talk to your car as you're driving to the grocery store, and your fridge will tell your car that you're out of milk. So when you go to the grocery store, you'll know you're out of milk and you can go buy it. That is in the future. Another thing that's available right now with LG is a washing machine app. So you can be in any room of the house, and you'll be told through your smartphone that your clothes have been washed. You don't have to be in the room looking at your timer or doing anything like that. Another example for the future, I mean, this one is, so right now, your plane can tell you your flight status. You can set your coffee maker in advance so that it's ready and made when you get up for breakfast in the morning. There are all kinds of different things that you can do, but in the future, there's going to be one app that ties it all together. So, for example, if you booked your flight here to Madrid and you were leaving on Tuesday night, so your app then talked to your alarm clock, it talked to your airplane, it talked to your coffee maker, and said, okay, I need to be on the road by 6:30 to catch my plane. Then say that night, it turns out that your car discovered that you're out of fuel. So you needed to spend more time stopping to go and get gas before you came to the airport. Automatically, without you doing a thing, the apps will all speak to each other, and your alarm will be set for 10 minutes early, your coffee will be made 10 minutes earlier, and so on. And then while you're sleeping, say that the airline noted that the plane you were supposed to go on has to have some extra maintenance, and it's going to be 45 minutes late. It all talks to the apps while you're sleeping, and everything changes. So you don't have to worry about a thing, and that's what the future is. And what all that means in terms of measurement is we're going to have more information about people's habits that we can then use for insights and then help our brands and our customers and our clients to come up with key insights that can really affect the strategies that they create based on all this information. So as I mentioned, the other workshop did talk about big data, so I just want to go through this briefly, particularly in terms of this book called The Human Face of Big Data, which was based on a project that was done last fall. It was done globally, where people all connected through an application and they all shared information live. It was all about measurement. They had a kickoff last September with an 8-day Measure Our World event where people shared and compared their information. As a result of that event, Fortune wrote about the world we have made as one that can be measured. So that while there is going to be a lot of data, and there's already a lot more data than there was a few years back, this really showed some of the things that are happening right now. For example, elephant seals are being equipped with antennas on their heads to map the oceans. That's happening already. Satellites are being used to target mosquitoes. Again, health comes into this. Not they just want to target where these mosquitoes are, but what they can do about it. And then people are taking pills to transmit to their doctor what's going on inside their bodies. Kind of creepy, but it's happening, and people are volunteering to do it. And I think that's all going to be, based on the information is, how much people want to share, what they want to share, and what people can do with it. There's a conversation going on right now that not too long from now, some of these things are going to take place in the next 3 to 5 years. Some will probably take place in the next 10 years. But there's a conversation going on right now about how if, say, for example, going back to your fridge, you decided you wanted to share the information about, on this wireless network, about your food consumption and what kinds of foods you have in your fridge. Then, for example, say that there's a Greek yogurt company and they notice that you're a user of Greek yogurt, they might send you coupons for their Greek yogurt, or what's starting to be talked about is this fee that they will pay you to continue to share your information, so that there will be incentive to do that. So I see that Jeremy's here to tell me that, but I'm first. I can take as long as I want, right?
You can see how breakfast went.
One last thing that I think is just probably the most important thing, if there's one takeaway that you have from this, big data has no value without big measurement. And big bad data is a problem. That really don't measure big data, measure good data. Otherwise, your intelligence is going to be flawed. So.
Okay, thank you very, very much. Just wait a second. I just want to know when the fridge runs away with the car, what's left for us?
I can't give
I
away
don't see
all
where
the
we
secrets.
fit in all of this. But a couple of questions for Margot, please. Go on, don't be shy. A couple of questions. Let's get the debate going. And also, they are tweeting more next door, and that was the challenge that David set down. His workshop had some heavy traffic. So hashtag AMEC Summit or hashtag AMEC Predictions. Get on the case. Any questions? Yes.
Do you see any pushback on any of the things that you've mentioned? Thank you. Excuse me. Any pushback at all on any of these sort of larger issues that you're talking about in terms of big data?
I think privacy is a big pushback, and there are some things about all this that people don't like. I mean, the convenience of having your apps talk to each other with very little, input from us is awesome. But this information that's being shared, I think, is really the whole privacy issue that there is pushback on. And I think that's something people are going to and are already starting to work on, because when there's so much data there. First of all, I mean, personally, I don't really want to know all these things about people, but other people do. And if we can use this to help our brands, our clients, our customers to get more information, great. But there comes a where do you draw the line, and I think that's where the pushback comes in.
Well, I guess my follow-up to that would be if, how does that impact then the data observations that you foresee? Or do you think that data observations in a world where people are beginning to push back on that, what impact, thank you, what impact of that pushback has on your data collection efforts?
I don't think it can be controlled. I mean, if you look at what's going on right now, there is bad data that's already out there, or there are perceptions of data. There are people, and be careful how I word this. There are people who think that the number of fans on Facebook or the number of followers on Twitter is a valuable metric. There are a lot of other people who say, why? What does that mean? What matters is how engaged they are, what they're saying about the brand, how it affects reputation, what they're talking about, so that we can target our analysis and therefore our strategies on that kind of information. And just having a number of fans or followers doesn't matter. Does that stop people around the world from saying these are valuable metrics? No, and some are going to continue to do so. I can pretty much say that the C-suite's not going to really care about that. The C-suite's going to want to know more business metrics, but there are still people. So I think the same thing with big data. There's going to be information that some people think, oh wow, this is really big, this is huge, this is important. There are others who are going to look at overall the bigger picture and say, okay, the challenge becomes, what data do we pull from when there's so much there? And really the big point is to make sure that you're looking at good data.
Margot, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
And now for the vendor perspective, the highly experienced CEO of Salience, Giselle Bodie.
Okay. So, I'm going to be talking a little bit more. It's really important, first of all, that you listen to both what Margot and Jodie are saying. These are clients who buy our services, and what they believe is going to happen in the future will drive our own strategies for our own businesses. And it's that area that I want to just cover. And I'm going to be quite quick. I've got 3 slides, 3 points that I want to share with you. From my experience of looking at what all the market demand of us, what do these clients need from us, and how do we organize ourselves and our businesses to respond to that? So what will the industry look like? So 3 points. Point 1, consolidation. There, as long as I've been in the industry, which is a long time, the word consolidation has been coming up. And yes, there has been a huge amount of consolidation in this industry. But I think it's really important to separate what do you mean by consolidation of ownership, i.e. companies buying other companies and growing like that, or consolidation of services, which is slightly different, which is around mixing the monitoring and data management and analysis. Be careful. And my point there is that skills for analysis and evaluation are very different to some of the skills needed in monitoring. I know from my own experience, earlier this morning, Pauline was talking about taxonomy. The importance of taxonomists and really experienced ones to the monitoring business is second to none. It is really important to get search strings, which is what taxonomy is about, correct, to get the correct content in order for the analysis folk to do their thing. So that, going back to Margot's point, getting the right data. My point is the skills present in monitoring are not necessarily the skills present in evaluation. And David Rockland this morning talked about hiring left brain, right brain people. That's so important, and it's becoming even more important if you listen to some of the things that Margot's predicting for the future. These things are going to require both sets of skills, because the data on its own, and I'll come back to that point, is not the whole story. It's how you deliver it to the client and interpret it for the client. So careful with consolidation. If you have a number of services under one brand, you've got to be clear on what each of those services is offering, and you've got to make it very clear to the client, because they can be a bit confused. Are you a monitoring business that offers analysis? Are you analysis that has a bit of monitoring? Your strategy is everything. What is it that you are trying to achieve? What market are you going after? Because if you have clarity of strategy, your clarity of offering will surely follow. So for me, the predictions are, in this area, that there will continue to be consolidation, but it has to be careful consolidation. Ownership is one thing, but consolidation of services is quite another. There needs to be a clear and distinct branding. For me, the future means that evaluation analysis services have to be very clear, and if that means giving them a separate brand within a consolidated group, then that's what has to be done, if that makes life easier for the clients. But of course, in this consolidation, one of the biggest advantages is that you get much better integration of the content and the analysis. And the days of independent analysis firms having to buy in content from various providers is reducing. It's not gone away for sure, because no one organization can provide everything. But there is much better integration, and that will for sure continue, in my opinion. So we've heard a lot about social media, and it's sometimes, we've been hearing about it for years and seeing the output from that. And it worries us all, because we wonder how to deal with it. And we'll hear, I'm sure, more about that in a moment. But it's still content. But of course, it's challenging in scale and the relevance. Having something having followers and so forth is not the ultimate measure of social media relevance. And it comes back to, what is your strategy? What is it the client wants? You cannot be all things to all people. So you need to do what you do best. And if I just sort of down to the predictions there, I think what you're going to see is more partnerships. No one organisation, not even the very big ones, can do everything. So I think this term you may have come across before, which is frenemies, friends plus enemies. You will be dealing with partners who, in some cases, are going to be competitors to you, to some clients, and in others, you are going to need to join together and partner to provide the service to the client. At the end of the day, it's what the client needs and what you can provide that matters most. So I think there will be less of, oh yeah, we can do that. Yes, we can do that. And more of the, yeah, we can certainly address those issues and we're going to pull together the best brains and the best teams, and they may not be necessarily all within your own organisation. The role of technology is, without doubt, we absolutely need the technology, but sometimes the promise of technology does not deliver, and it's really important to get to what is important to the client, and the relevance, again, is the issue. And technology it's got a way to go, and I think over the coming years we're going to see improvements, but at the end of the day, I don't think the human being is going to be replaced anytime soon in the world of analysis. And there were some questions this morning about PR and has it got a seat at the top table. Gosh, we've been hearing that. I'm sure Richard Houghton's heard that for years. Well, for sure, I think, this morning's speakers, the budgets for PR are growing, providing you can prove that you are delivering, and that's where this business comes into. And my third point is a geographical one. The North America, European axis, which is where the origins of media analysis first developed, is becoming less dominant. Not to say it's not dominant, but a lot of development is happening in those markets. But, and I'm certainly seeing that within Salience, because we have a very strong Dubai, Middle East core, where the services there are different. They're having to react differently to their local markets than the ways that we've traditionally seen things happen in North America or Europe. So one size doesn't fit all, and the European stroke US model isn't necessarily the answer for emerging markets. Where, on commodity services, where you have multiple services, like content provision, data analytics, automated, there is huge downward pressure on price. But at the end of the day, there is still huge value in the value-added services that we bring, and that is a truth, and I think that will remain a truth. So the predictions on a global basis and on a geographic basis, I think you will see small local experts partnering, as I mentioned earlier, with bigger groups to provide services locally. Emerging markets, because of the pricing issues, they cannot afford to use US or European companies sometimes, will develop their own. And I think the bigger markets would do well to pay attention to what's happening in those markets. And in turn, this all leads to more consolidation and more partnerships. So those are my 3 points that I want to leave with you from a strategic perspective. And now listen to the clients again.
Can I, before we thank Giselle and before she goes, can I just, note that Salience issued a press release yesterday announcing further consolidation, so Giselle speaks from the heart. Can I invite a quick question before we move on? Any questions for Giselle? If you haven't, start thinking now. We'll wrap up at the end. Thank you very much, Giselle. And now, the client perspective. I'd like to introduce Jodie Kennedy. She laid down a challenge this morning over breakfast. She said she is going to tell us that we're not delivering what she needs. And she's here for very selfish reasons. She is the head of corporate communications in the Americas for Sabich, the plastics business. So, Jodie, over
Thank
to you.
you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. And I do need to make the confession up front, which Jeremy is alluding to, is that basically I was trying to be very gracious when David invited me to this, really thanking him very much, and I'm really honored. But the reality is that I'm really here just about myself. I'm really here to tell you that I don't have what I need, and I need all of you. In fact, I needed all of you yesterday. I'm going to talk a little bit about what I need specifically, and even though I negotiated more time from some of my counterparts over here at breakfast, I can see the negotiation means nothing as Jeremy comes up and drags us off. But I'm going to try to go as quickly as I can, but I'm happy to do a deeper dive with any one of you, because truly, and I'm going to cover this later, I want to be a helper in this particular process. But the reality is that during the next 10 minutes, maybe 12, I am going to sound like a very needy girlfriend. But I want you to understand that you have the key for me and my colleagues in other companies and across the function to really make a difference in our businesses. So we desperately need you. And now that I've been here, and it may be my last time here, but based on how long ago, that I'm going to be a very loud voice with a lot of you I meet, because I can't let you off the hook, I'm sorry. So let me go to the first chart here, which I think is pretty appropriate for the current state of the function. And that is the sense of panic when you're sitting in a room with executives and you are making a case for a significant investment in communications that you know in your heart is truly going to make a difference in driving growth in the business. You just know it. But the problem is you can't prove it. And when you think about executives, they're not about what Jody thinks. It's about what the numbers are telling them. And that's what they base their decisions on. So we really need, at the end of the day, to be able to quantify the business value of what we do every day. And to be honest with you, I think it's really the holy grail of our industry. All right, so maybe not this holy grail, all right? Let me give you what I think might be a better one, maybe not as fun, but a better one. And that's about communications holy grail. The ability for us to be able to speak and executive speak and be able to persuade them and have them understand that we truly are enabling growth. We are a critical enabler, not just one of many, but we are a critical enabler of growth. Today, unfortunately, we're viewed sometimes as the soft stuff. We're viewed as the things that are, other companies do it, so we need to do it. And if you were to say to an executive, corporate communications really is an enabler of business growth, they would say, seriously? There would be a lot of leaders who just don't get it. Again, this is where we need your help. I think if you consider, and I know you all know this, but I'm just trying to give you the perspective from the client, so I'm not going to necessarily share anything revolutionary on themes or topics or categories, but I do think about measurement in two categories, input and impact. And when I think about input, I think about it in terms of this is the data that helps me define the communication strategies and plans I need to engage in to make a difference, and also helps me to get the necessary approvals, particularly the dollars and the investment I need from executives, that they will too are convinced that this particular activity will make a difference. On the impact side, this is really the proof that we have indeed made that difference. So they go hand in hand, and I think David was covering that earlier. We just don't need measurement at the back end to say, yes, we did this. It is a critical driver of the decisions we make and strategies up front. And why I want to share this with you is because at the end of the day, if there's any takeaway about our function, is that I want you to know that when I sit at a table, I want to be viewed as a business person first and a communications expert second. I can't be a business executive, be viewed as a business leader without all of you. No pressure. So let me just start talking a little bit about measurement and metrics as it pertains to input. So a little bit of a story. Earlier in my career, my first global job, I was doing communications for probably what you might consider a low-end high-tech company. And my encounters with my colleagues in France, first to tell me that France was different, that the same thing that you do in America, messages, tools, whatever, it's just not going to work here. It has to be different. Now, I'm sensing many of you probably have heard that statement before, but for any of my French colleagues here, stay with me because the story ends in a good way for you. So, I'm sitting here and I'm saying, come on, all right, so I understand a language thing, we have to translate, whatever, but come on, it has to be the same, just with a twist of the translation. Well, I am here to tell you that I have learned over the years that my colleagues in France were absolutely right. France is different, but not alone. It's also Shanghai, Seattle, Saudi Arabia, and Sao Paulo. You see, the reality is where you come from, your culture, the experiences you have had, even within a town, can influence how you think about something, how you think about a company. And one size just does not fit all. We can think about the employee category. An employee in Germany and an employee in Jakarta, the world is different for them. What they care about, what they're worried about, what keeps them up at night is different. And we need to know that to be able to be very surgical in the work that we do in communications. So when here's the needy girlfriend pitch. What do I need from you? I need your help in giving me data, both quantitative and qualitative, on the stakeholders. And I'm talking also about unique nuances about each one so that I can really zero in, again, in a very efficient, surgical way and make sure from a messaging channel, whatever approach, that I'm going to zero in a way that's going to enable me to be effective and impactful. Okay, so just a little quick overview of stakeholders, because I just kind of brought up the S word here. At the end of the day, I view my job as influencing different types of stakeholders to support SABIC's ultimate business strategies and desires, okay? The reality is that stakeholders' mindsets and behaviors, what they think about us, what they do, what actions, decisions they take, can make or break a company and the success of that company. Stakeholder-based communications are huge. Absolutely huge. And if you look at this, I know people talk a lot about PR. Well, I think about this in a more holistic way when I'm doing communications. I'm thinking about any one of these particular stakeholders because this is not in isolation. People talk to one another, no matter where they fall in the stakeholder category here. So we need to be mindful of that and understand the particular needs. I have to tell you that, I use this often for different things we may do. For example, if SABIC were to open up a new chemical plant, right? Depending on where this plant would be, you have no idea if that community has already had a bad experience, potentially with some kind of corporation, manufacturing corporation. They may care only about the jobs that are coming in. They may be worried about the safety practices or manufacturing processes you have because they care about not only the safety of the community, but the people, their neighbors who are working there. You need to know this because as you are telling your story, as you are moving into that community, you need to be able to answer the mail on things that they are worried about because that is going to enable greater acceptance by those stakeholders. So when it comes down to needy girlfriend, what I need from you, I need to understand what these stakeholders think. And I don't need to just understand the stakeholder category in one lump. I need to know what these stakeholders think around the world. If I'm going into a particular community, in the example I just gave you, I need to know about the stakeholders in that particular town, what their experience has been. Because again, when I understand where I have strengths and where I understand we have gaps, then I'm going to be better prepared to deliver and develop communication strategies that are really going to drive those mindsets and behaviors of the stakeholders we need to have business success. Another cartoon. I'm sorry. I know I didn't bring numbers charts, but I felt this might be a little more fun. So at least for me, sorry. No, I need your numbers. Please don't get that wrong. But I needed a little humor here for myself. This is an example of us dark ages in the communications function, right? This is back in the day where it was like the Chinese menu. We did everything, and the more we did, the better it was. And the more we did, executives really felt like we were doing stuff, and doing stuff was good because things were getting done. But the reality was we were creating these different activities or strategies in isolation. We really didn't know, we didn't really think of things in terms of the granular level of stakeholders. We thought about the media, maybe employees, but we really did not get to the next level of understanding what those challenges might have been. So what we found is that as we transition forward, we need to get past the idea of just getting things done and activities, if you will, but we need to really think about the impact that we're generating here. And the reality of the future is the money we had to spend years ago on communications has been cut drastically, drastically. So the executives we're talking to don't just want to hear about all the stuff we're getting done. They want to make sure we're creating the right stuff and that we have an ROI that is tied to that. That really ties obviously back to the right stakeholders via the right channels and obviously the right messages. Need a girlfriend, what I need from you. I need to know specifically how communications, my field, is helping to contribute to growth. What I mean by that is I am one enabler. My function is one enabler in driving growth. You've got the sales folks who are also doing that. You have the people in customer servicing answering the phone. It is hard for me to basically say, I own this stake. This is the piece I own in helping to grow. I need your help in that. I have worked with about 20 CEOs, presidents, and CFOs in my career, and that doesn't mean I haven't been able to hold a job, just for the record. The understanding that these executives have about communications varies drastically. You have some who have great experience, and you have others who have never really done it before. So the people who have had great experiences, if you think about flying, these are the people who will require some data and they're willing to make the leap because they get it, they've been there, they understand the value. But then you have others, and I'll put the business leader I support in this category who happens to be an engineer and is very data-driven. This guy is not going to take a leap of faith. This guy wants to fly with instruments. And you're finding that a lot of the leaders we do have out there, I'm sorry, I thought that was Jeremy. They need those instruments. They need the data. They need to know that, in essence, that we really can drive ROI, and we need the data to predict that. So what I need from you is I need data that's going to help me reassure my executives that there is proven experience and data that when I'm recommending, preview of coming attractions, there is really something that what we're doing that is going to have an impact. It's proven, it's been proven in other areas. I need your help in selling the communications and the investments that we need across the function. So, many of you probably know what the kids' table is all about. At holiday gatherings, you have too many people, your table doesn't have enough folks. So if you are under a certain age, you end up at the kids' table. No one in their right mind, no matter how old you are, wants to be here. No one. You really want to be at the adults' table. You really want to be there because you feel that is where the action is happening. The same thing is within a company. Right? Right now, I think our function is somewhere between the kids' table and the adults' table, right? We want to be at the adults' table. We desperately want to be there. We want to be that trusted advisor. We want to have the pull from our executives of our council, not just be pushed, which we often do. We want them to create pull for us. And again, we want to be treated as business people first and communications experts second. So as we think about the seat at the table, the need from you is that I need data that's going to help me create insight-based communication strategies, because the insights that I can deliver and share are going to be the things that are going to enable me to be part of that dialogue, not pushing my way, but they're going to be pulling me there. So my last chart, Jeremy, you'll be pleased to know this. The last needy girlfriend chart, this is kind of the big needy girlfriend chart of what we need from you. We need to align our communication strategies to the business objectives. We need the data to be able to do that and demonstrate with that with our leaders. We need the stakeholder insights because that's going to ensure that the work that we're doing, the investments we're making are surgical and are truly relevant to how we're going to be influencing the mindsets and behaviors of those stakeholders. We want data that's going to help us validate our communications plans and recommendations to help us secure the investment. We want to be able to speak, as our executives do, to help them understand the impact that we're really having in supporting business growth. And we want to create that pull that we're not only going to be sitting at the adults' table, but that they're going to ask us to talk at the adults' table and to really provide our perspective in a data-driven way. So I'm going to stop talking about my selfish ways here and start offering my help. I want you to leave here knowing that myself and I'm sure other colleagues in our field, we would like to collaborate with you on this. We are happy to help you, be a sounding board, because you know what? We need this, and it needs to be right, and it needs to resonate. So I am putting myself out there as a partner with anyone who needs a client perspective on this. So thank you for your time. Thank you, Jeremy.
Jodie, thank you very much. That's fantastic. As I've got the microphone and you want to be a needy girlfriend, I have the honour of being the first to ask you for a date.
There you go.
So there, in front of everybody.
Don't tell my husband, but yes.
All right. They are tweeting about this session next door. That's how good this is getting. So these pictures are appearing in the next door session. So well done, guys. Some questions for Jodie. We've got a quick question before we move on. I'm sure all of you will be dying to see her in person afterwards. But yes, at the back there.
Annele from Medius International. Do you think that your colleagues worldwide share your opinion about wanting to be in adults' table? Because I have sensed in my 16 years in this business that not all PR people want to be there for a reason or another, which is a surprise.
I agree with you. I think not everyone. I think a lot of people want to be there, but I'm not sure they understand why they should be there and the impact they can have and what they need to do to get there. I have heard of a large corporation, which I will not name, which surprised me that the executive in this particular agency, with this particular corporation, was only concerned on the PR side about increasing the number of media clips. And I think, again, it gets back to the chart about activities versus impact. We can measure activities, but when you're an executive, and again, if we really want to sit at the table, we're doing a number of clips to what end? So what does that mean? Okay, we did more than we did last year. Okay, that's great, I think. But what are we really doing to enable growth? And if I'm spending millions of dollars on communications activities, what's the ROI? What am I getting for my money? Because it may be a short lifespan of that particular communications activity. And guess what? We need ongoing, sustainable investment in communications. Okay.
Jodie, thank you very much. Okay, some strong messages there. Now back to the agency perspective with a local twist. I'd like to introduce Tony Noel, the CEO of Ketchum Spain.
Thank you. I'd just like to say thank you to Jodie after I sold her some of my minutes this morning over breakfast. I didn't realize I was going to be so much in agreement with everything she was going to say. So thank you for sending out a lot of messages that I think are right on the ball. And I'd like to follow up with Jeremy, with his, I can't see Jeremy at the moment, but I'm sure he's over there, about the BA flight. As Jeremy said, our CEO, our European CEO, David Gallagher, was actually on that flight, and we were with him in Barcelona at the Sabre Awards last week. And the follow-up from a PR agency perspective is that what could have been a really bad crisis for BA, I mean, you've got a plane, the engine goes on fire, they have to do like an emergency landing, it could have crashed, I mean, it could have been an absolute disaster. They actually did a very good job of communicating, and David, being a PR professional, his take on it was actually very positive, that they kept the information coming, they were well informed, and at the end of it, they were actually offered some free tickets. So they got his feeling at the end of it was actually a very positive one. So I think they turned a potential crisis into something that actually improved their reputation at the end of the day, and I think that's an interesting take on that. Let me just click through. I'd like to give not only the PR agency perspective, but the perspective from a smaller country. I say from Southern Europe, and I think the question of scale comes up a lot here, and the question of scale leads to the question of budgets. Let me give you a chart. I think that says everything about what is the situation in Spain at the moment. That will give you an idea. The economy is not doing very well. There's a very high level of unemployment. If you've got sort of 26-27% unemployment, although yesterday's figures are actually improving, unemployed people don't spend a lot. So if you've got a lot of unemployed people not spending a lot, marketing budgets get cut, and that's the reality of life at the moment. Marketing budgets are tight. So you're competing. We, the PR world, the PR agencies, our PR communications director clients, are competing for a slice of a smaller cake, which is the communications budget. So sometimes The situation of our colleagues in the US doesn't always scale down to Spain. If you have somebody saying, well, you spend 8% of your budget on measurement, and that works out to $80,000 or whatever, that's when you're talking about $1 million budget. Well, in Spain, here's the reality. The budget might be $100,000, and so you've got $8,000 to spend on measurement. How do you do that? And we need to do it, because I think the other lesson is the opportunity is there, because when you're competing with other marketing disciplines for a smaller budget, you have to prove what you're doing. And if, as an industry, we can't prove the ROI, which goes back to what Jody was saying, we're not going to get the budget. And I think we can prove what we're doing, but we do have a bit of a chicken and egg situation. We need to spend the money on measurement to prove what we're doing so that we can get bigger budgets, but we're moving from such a small base. So we need somehow, or you collectively as the experts on measurement need to help us come up with ways where in the smaller countries with the smaller budgets, we can actually start measuring the return on the investment that we're providing so that we can get bigger budgets, and then we can spend more on measurement, and we can get a turnaround and back into growth. Social media as well is more important than ever. It's a challenge to measure it, as I'm sure you're all aware. And I'd also make a big point that we need more than ever business insights. Again, in the PR world, I mentioned in the previous workshop that increasingly we're not just competing against other PR agencies, we're competing against other marketing disciplines. We're competing against the ad agencies. The ad agencies realize increasingly that the old world of 30-second ads isn't working so much for them anymore. But they've still got big budgets because they're coming from a historic perspective where their budgets were bigger, and they've got the money, they've got the ear of the marketing directors, and they're actually starting to do a lot of work that we classify as PR. And if you go, as I said in the previous session, to the Cannes Awards or whatever, and you find ad agencies doing what I would classify as PR work. And sometimes they're doing it with very good insights, very good ideas, because they've got the research to come up with that creativity. And we need to pay attention to that and to make sure that we don't get too complacent. So I think in PR, we need the insights, we need to prove the return on the investment we're doing. And let's not forget as well that we also need content for what we're doing. Very often, we need content. Sometimes we think it's more expensive than it actually is. I mean, yesterday when I was talking to David Rockland, over lunch, I was thinking about doing a survey for a client that didn't really have any content as a basis for a PR program. My thought was that generating that content was going to be very expensive, but actually talking to David, he came up with innovative ways where that content could be generated much more cheaply. So again, we need to make sure we don't get into preconceptions about what things are going to cost and rule things out before we've actually asked the questions. So what are the implications for measurement? I think in the smaller European countries where you probably see the market as being very small, I think the potential market is actually rather large. If we can get the price point right. What will that take? I don't know if it means a leaner business model on your part, if it means having two-tier pricing approaches for the larger markets, the smaller markets, perhaps doing things in different ways in the smaller markets so that you can get the results that we need. And I think you have to consider what people want to buy. I mean, I know it's sexier from the measurement world to come up with very sophisticated dashboards, but to be honest, they're going to be much more costly than a market like Spain or the smaller countries can actually afford. But we do need the basics, and let's not get carried away with the things that we're capable of doing. Let's think about things that people actually want to buy. So if we're looking at what people want to buy, what are our clients saying in Spain? What do they need at the moment? We're in a crisis, so they really need not the nice-to-have things. They really need the things that they absolutely need to survive. So they need to sell more things. They obviously need to change behaviors and opinions. And they want big ideas. And we have to make sure as a PR agency, we come to clients with those big ideas, and they're not getting their big ideas from their ad agency or from other marketing disciplines. At the same time, they want to spend less, which is our challenge, a challenge for all of us collectively. And what they do spend, they want to make sure that they're spending it very well and that they're optimizing that spend. What do they want anymore? As Jody said, they're not really interested in the activity reports we give them. They're not interested in the clippings. I don't think anybody actually reads those reports anyway. They're just interested in defending their own seat at the table within the client organization. So from my point of view in Spain, that's the way I see it from the periphery here in Southern Europe. Well, thank you.
Tony, thank you very much, helping to get us back on track there. Barry is telling me we absolutely cannot overrun. I'm challenging that, but quick question for Tony.
Tony,
Go
how do
ahead.
you improve ROI in social media for the client?
With great difficulty. I mean, it depends on the budget they have, obviously, and I think it's a challenge for everybody.
If
If
you
it,
have a case, showcase, maybe you can share with us.
So we've got
we had an interesting case about 3 weeks ago, but I mean, in return on investment, it takes time. So the actual return remains to be seen. We work for a glass recycling company called Ecovidrio. It's one of our larger clients in Spain. So we did a social media campaign for them with a Spanish footballer. And the start of the campaign was that he is a big tweeter, has a huge following on Twitter. He tweeted saying that I don't waste time recycling glass. So there was a big scandal which we knew was going to happen. Everybody's saying, oh, this guy is crazy. Why? How can you actually go out and say that even if you don't recycle glass? It's not politically correct. And we let that evolve. And then he did another tweet. He said, what I actually meant to say is that I don't waste time recycling glass because recycling glass is not a waste of time. And it got picked up and it became a huge trending topic on Twitter. What we now need to see is how will that turn into the increased levels or the ratio of glass that's recycled? How will that convert into tons of recycled glass over the next few weeks? But as I say, it's very recent. But that would, for me, would be the test of success. Teresa?
Yeah, I mean, I want to ask your answer. The clients were so happy that he's investing and in the data, and he's investing in what the result is going to be. So I mean, at the moment, the result is great because the client realized how successful was the campaign that he wanted to invest in measurement, the campaign. Before, I don't think he thinking about that. So the result is good.
Tony, thank you very much. And now finally back to the vendor perspective, I'd like to welcome all the way from Australia, and for those rugby fans out there, the British and Irish Lions are 10-0 up against Western Australia as we speak. But I'd like to introduce Daniel Millen, the founder of Mediaverse. Daniel, welcome.
Thanks, Jeremy. Hi everybody, thanks for having me here today. I just thought I'd introduce myself. I started a media analysis company in Melbourne, Australia about 5 years ago. Started from the couch with no money, not a dollar, on my own. Today it's one of Australia's fastest growing and most successful analysis companies, and we serve a lot of the world's global brands, and including the Australian government. So I sort of stumbled into media analysis in 2003 when I was a student at the University of Melbourne. So I've been involved in the industry for about 10 years in total, essentially since I was born, and I guess it sort of feels that way. Today I want to talk a little bit about my story, why I started in the evaluation industry, the opportunity I saw then, because the theme of my speech today is that the opportunity I saw in 2003 is essentially still the same opportunity that exists today. I want to talk about technology in particular and the delivery of what I think is where I think we need to be, which is real-time analysis and intelligence. But also I want to talk about transparency, and that is us being very transparent about what we do to our clients. On top of this, I want to talk a little bit about thought leadership, looking at the Barcelona principles and what they might look like in 10 years from today. So what I see today is essentially the same opportunity that I saw in 2003. And so I think that before we can start talking about the future, there's a tremendous catch-up piece that we as an industry have to make. Now, I think the future for our industry is a marriage between technology and analytical leadership. And I'm here today to say that the opportunity for us all to be guests at the wedding is still available. And if I'm going, I'm going to have to change this shirt. Now, a little bit about my story, and people often ask me, why did you set up an analysis company? With all the pain, the uncertainty, sleeping at your nana's house so you could afford to get an office, putting air tickets on the credit card so you can go and meet clients in Sydney. There's a lot of people who ask me why, and the answer I give them is 1, I'm absolutely crazy, and 2, media analysis lets my inner geek shine. But the third reason, and probably the main reason that I started the company, was because I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and an entrepreneur will never give up an excellent opportunity. And that's what I saw in this industry back in those days. And so in 2003, when I was working at the University of Melbourne, I was working at the media office as a paper delivery boy, and my boss came up to me and said, Daniel, I need some help. Can you help me analyse the media coverage for the university? So I said, yes, of course. And I got the gig, $16 an hour plus superannuation. And I went back to my university dorm. He gave me 6,000 media clips, a folder for each month. And I thought, what the hell have I done? So I organised to meet with the university's leading communications professors. I bought them coffee and cake and bribed them to help me build some sort of methodology. I posted an ad up on the student notice board, and I recruited 15 students and gave them all essentially a folder of clips, and we all together analysed the 6,000 clips in under 3 weeks. Now this was 2003. Remember, Facebook didn't exist in 2003. Mark Zuckerberg was still studying at Harvard it was the year before he dropped out. In 2003, I remember that monitoring companies used to actually courier clips daily in the morning for yesterday's news. You all might be a bit young to remember these days. Mass media in 2003 was making huge profits. So it was a very different time. So here I am 10 years later. And what I really notice about the industry is the same opportunity still exists. And whilst the media landscape has changed dramatically, I don't think that the delivery of media analysis services has changed too much. In 2003, media analysis companies delivered hard copy reports to all of their clients. And by hard copy, I mean PowerPoint or PDF. Those reports generally looked backwards in a month or a quarter and had some basic metrics around share of voice, favourability, key message delivery. We had extremely uneducated clients, and we had even more of an uneducated C-suite. But this is pretty much what I still see today. Now, that was the slide for that bit. Now, before we can start looking about the future of analysis, so I've sort of compared us to those Google glasses. You know, this is the future of, it's the future of a lot of things in those glasses. But before we can talk about that sort of thing, I think there's a tremendous catch-up piece for our industry just to get to this stage, to have our Google search bit right. Because if we're an analysis company, I don't think as an industry we're at this level before we can start talking about the glasses. And the key themes of my speech is around our industry delivering real-time results. So as news is breaking, we should be giving real-time analysis. And Giselle touched on the merging of monitoring and evaluation as a single product. I also think that we need to be very transparent with what we're doing and deliver it with flexible online technologies. And I also think that our thought leadership as an industry will need to advance from the Barcelona principles of 2010, and I will have a little chat about what I think the 2020 principles might look like. So the first theme is the real-time analysis. I honestly don't understand how in 2013 we as an industry are still delivering PDF or PowerPoint reports. They're looking backwards for a period of time. I think as an industry, it's high time that we come together and offer real-time results. Now, we do that at Mediaverse in Melbourne, and it's not real-time, as in the instant the news hits, we're evaluating it and delivering to clients. But at the Mediaverse, we don't employ robots. We've only got humans. Giselle also touched on this around the extent to which automated analysis will come into play. And I honestly don't think a robot will ever be able to analyse qualitatively news coverage like a human does. If they could, I would slash all my wages, employ only robots and retire to Miami, but I haven't done that. So I feel that to offer real-time analysis, there's just a few hours delay between coverage breaking and delivering it to the clients. And this will bring our industry into the same field as other key areas of the C-suite, such as knowing how many sales the company has made today. Every company knows that data, but how many companies know the impact their communications had today? So that's trend one, and I think that trend's coming soon. The next trend is transparency in media evaluation. Now, transparency is all about being very upfront and clear with exactly how we've evaluated each and every item. It surprises me that in 2013, the majority of analysis firms are not upfront and clear with exactly how each and every news item has been analysed. So at the Mediaverse, we developed a portal, and it gives our clients the opportunity to click on every graph and table in every report and see exactly how each and every news item has been analysed. That may seem obvious, but I think that's the sort of stuff we need to get us to the Google search of today. It also offers so much benefits in that it opens up the conversations with our clients when they can start to question, why is this item evaluated in this way? And it forces us to be totally confident in our ratings. So I think transparency has to be a trend of the near future across our industry. Now, my final point is about analytical leadership and what the Barcelona Principles might look like in 2020. The biggest thing about our industry is the need to educate the C-suite, and Jody touched on the need to talk in the C-suite language. So my hopes and prayers for the Barcelona Principles for 2020 is that they would be as globally accepted as the global accounting standards that exist today in the accounting field. Now, my new CEO at the Mediaverse is a former accountant, and it's uncanny the parallels between financial accounting and communications evaluation. So the global accounting standards provide globally accepted rules through which everything on a balance sheet is measured and valued. So for us to get there, we need to make our standards more sophisticated, and then we have a huge education piece in the marketplace, starting with the C-suite. Tomorrow, my colleague Chris Foster from Booz Allen is talking on the C-suite, so I'll be very interested to hear what he has to say about that. So, moving on from share of voice and favourability and prominence, I think the Barcelona Principles of 2020 will have sophisticated indexes that, whilst they're all flexible and we can tailor to different countries and regions, they give globally accepted ways of evaluating and mixing and measuring metrics. So I think that's another trend. Now, I didn't want to talk too much about the future and the other technology because my colleagues have discussed that. But what I really see, and I haven't been, this is my analogy to what I think we are as an industry compared to the Google search. So what I'm saying is we've got a huge catch-up piece to get there. And our biggest challenge, obviously. I don't want to talk too much about the future because I think it's been covered, but what I really want to leave everybody with today is the tremendous opportunity that exists before us. It's still in some ways very similar to 2003, and that just means that the opportunity still exists. So I guess if there's a wedding between technology and analytical leadership, we're all invited. I'll see you there. Thanks, everybody.
Just hold on a second, Daniel. Thank you very much, Daniel. Any questions for Daniel or any of the other panel members? David, I wondered if you had a comment on the principles of 2020.
Yeah, sure.
Jeremy, Daniel, I guess I'm interested in your thoughts when you talked about the Barcelona principles and their evolution to 2020. What I heard you say was that they're widely adopted as the accounting standards are. Do you see a need to evolve the principles, in other words, what they actually say, as this industry continues to evolve?
I think that the Barcelona principles are, wide, all-encompassing statements. And I think what we need is just a very detailed manual or guidebook for the industry around different and accepted ways of evaluating media coverage and how we might mix and match those ways. And also some indexes that everybody could start to use, which are globally recognised indexes, such as in Australia we've developed the Commendable Coverage Index, which looks at a way of getting prominent, favourable coverage, depending on all of your communications objectives, but just some broad guidelines, just some more meat to the principles. That's sort of where I see things headed.
I think Margot wanted to jump in on that.
Actually, I didn't want to jump in on that. David, I wanted to answer an earlier question, but David, did you have a follow-up question before I changed the subject?
No, change away. Go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to go back to the ROI question. I think you saw in my presentation about bottlenose, I think they're moving toward that direction. I think that a lot of vendors are going to be moving toward that direction, where through algorithms, and again, not getting too deep into the weeds, but algorithms based on business intelligence and social conversations, we're going to be able to look at the correlations between social conversations and things like stock prices and sales and their income's ROI. Right now, I think ROI, it's a financial term. We cannot provide it unless we know what the investments are. And that's really key. I mean, it is a financial calculation. It's not invented by PR. It stands for return on investments. And if companies don't tell us what the investment numbers are, we can't calculate the ROI. So I think we go back to what Jody says, and that's where we get into what we can calculate in PR, which is impact. And what is the impact based on the goals that you have, and did we achieve that? So I just wanted to bring that up. I do have one example from a previous life where I was approached by a company where they wanted to see, they had two distinct budgets, both were web-based program, and both the paid advertising, online advertising, led to a website, so led to a specific URL, and the social media outreach on the PR side had a specific URL. They both came to the same URL. The company was willing to open up their investments, and they saw how much they paid for paid advertising versus social media, and we could connect by saying how many people, what were the unique visitors that came to the website via online advertising compared to the PR outreach. And as it turns out, the ROI was calculated, and it was 9 times more effective in this particular case to go through the social media outreach than the online advertising. So ROI can be calculated as long as people are willing to tell us what their investments are, and that's not easy these days when everything is integrated. There is social and PR and advertising. How can you isolate? It's very hard to do, but it is doable.
Margot, thank you very much. I think one last question before we break for lunch. Jason.
I'll just shout it. The Barcelona Principles talks a lot about outcomes. I'd just like to ask the panel, do you think we've progressed as an industry since 2010? And will marketing mix models become more mainstream? Do you see that happening?
I think absolutely we've progressed. I think the acceptance of the principles, and they are principles, they're not standards yet, but I'm sure we'll be working to that. And I think Daniel's point is valid. We need standards, not necessarily a standard, but that will come later in the proceedings. So we have made progress for sure. Everybody, we were all talking about Barcelona principles. The market, clients have heard about these principles. Are they always implemented? Not necessarily. So certainly I've seen progress. And the second part of your question, you have to remind me again.
The marketing mix model.
Oh, right, yeah.
See those become mainstream, because PR, I don't think, is just going to exist doing analysis on its own. It needs to be integrated into the wider comms mix.
And I think in the session here this morning, it's about bringing the skills for market mix modelling. We don't always have them within analysis today, and I think that's a really important investment for companies in the future. I don't know if anybody else has a view on that.
I'd sort of add to that by saying it depends also on clients being prepared to share what sometimes for them is very confidential information. I mean, we have a client, P&G, for example, does marketing mix modeling, but they keep very close to the chest details on sales of specific products. But so they do that, and they do that with our PR work slots into that, but they actually do that themselves.
On that note, we've still an extra 10 minutes, so I'm in trouble with Barry, but I just wanted to sum up just by saying I think what we've learnt, what I will take away is if you don't know about the Internet of Things or big data, you probably want to find out. Speak the language of the C-suite if you want to eat at the adults' table. I think we all aspire to do that. In challenging economies, learn to be innovative, do more with less. Consolidation is good. Lots of us have been through it, but we mustn't lose our specialism. And as an industry, we're having to play catch up. Daniel gave the example of real time. We are certainly not real time. We're far from it. But we aspire to get there. And I think my last takeaway is that if you're a deep sea diver, I think elephant seals just took your job. But I'd like to say thank you very much to today's panel for some wonderful insights. Thank you very much.